much more open to probably you
Okay, cool.
talking about how you want to approach this one since we're at a
Yeah,
new track, and so on and so forth.
and I'll ask you about all that. That's
Yeah, yeah. All right. So let me see. Yeah,
we're up.
we're
We're
all
up, right?
yeah, we're all live now. So how you guys doing? Obviously, Sheets is with me for once, so that's nice to see. It's been a while since we've actually been able to do a show together. And I was telling Sheets before this that it's probably more, or at least a race like this, it probably leads more to him having more way on explaining where he's going or what the builds are like since we're at a new track. Since everybody, had a testing session earlier during the off season, an hour practice today. I mean, if you ask me, I'm kind of just going to default to where people were in practice. So we can look at two other things related to this slate. So one is obviously it's a really, really early slate. This is the earliest NASCAR slate we have all year. And so projections and builds and stuff might be more concentrated in one direction than another one because obviously after this we have a 10 game NBA or MLB slate, all the other sports going on. There's a really, really quick turnaround today, and so I'm actually way more interested in seeing what the Sims are getting, where you're going, what your builds are looking like, and stuff like that.
Well, let's talk for a bit because we haven't caught up in a while with like the DFS landscape and stuff like that. I mean, I haven't really been following too much of how people have been doing, what's been winning and stuff. I had a very exciting sweat actually last week in the Cup Series. I was like in first and second, like right down to the end, and then you know how it goes. It's like I ended up like fourth or fifth or something like that, which was really good. But what I've been noticing is that I think you've had some pretty good success identifying kind of fishy chalk at the top sometimes. Like there was one time, I forget which race it was, which track, where I was like 172% Kyle Larson or something. And you were like, well, we didn't talk about it beforehand, but I was looking at the Discord. You're like, I don't know about this Larson chalk business. And he wiped out like pretty early, I think, or something like that. Um, are you finding that, I don't know, that for example, you find that chalk is becoming like really, really extended chalk, for example? Like what I usually find is when I come up with something like even for this race, like I'll have like a Corey Haim ownership projection of like 55 or something like that. And then at the end of the day, it'll be more like 70, something like that. Are you seeing stuff like that?
Yeah, we're still seeing that in the landscape. I think it's very much a race by race basis now. Like
Okay.
used to be, okay, the Sims are pushing this guy, the ownership's going to be higher for whatever reason. I've like just this season I've been like really good. You mentioned like the fishy chalk and stuff. Like I don't really know what it's been. Or I guess maybe at least the way that I've been looking at stuff is how people have been performing much more recently, and certainly on like intermediate tracks. I've been really leaning into like raw speed during long runs in these races and stuff. And anytime we've ran into chalk not performing or doing well in these races, it's tend to be guys who haven't had a lot of success actually getting through the field. Um, and obviously, just getting lucky with people who've been wrecking out and stuff. But I've just, it seems to me like I've just been probably more lucky than anything else on saying where I want to be overweight or underweight on people, honestly.
Well, you mentioned that this is a new track. So with that said, so Rockingham, this is the first time they're racing at Rockingham. Is that the story?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously they used to race in Rockingham. Like this was a staple of the Cup Series up until 2004. The Cup hasn't been here since 2004, and the trucks haven't been here since 2013.
Oh
So
wow.
after that, the track was basically kind of like abandoned. They repaved it 2 years ago with COVID money that the state of North Carolina got. Like during all that time, they bumped up or put money into Wilkesboro, Rockingham, stuff like that. But this is the first event they've had here since really 2013 in any
Wait a
form or
minute.
fashion.
This is not the Rockingham I know. This isn't Rockingham, New Hampshire?
No, it's Rockingham. I think it's North Carolina.
Oh, so forget what I said. I posted in the Discord when I went to college. There's a racetrack, Rockingham Park in New Hampshire. That was like 40 miles north of Boston, which I would degen at from time to time. So when you mentioned it was Rockingham Park, oh my God, I didn't even know they had racing in Rockingham Park, like car racing. So this is a different Rockingham Park. So
Oh,
so
that's
let,
so
so let, so let
hilarious.
me ask you, what what do you imagine? I mean, based on practice, based on whatever, like give me some ideas of what you think should, you know, what type of cars, what type of builds, what type whatever do you think this track should accommodate?
So if we look at just the standard data points of the track, it's less than a mile, like it's just right under a
Oh,
mile. And
it's like a bowl.
typically when we go to racetracks at a mile or lower and stuff, we're usually looking at low bankings or short tracks or whatever. Whereas this track is really a hybrid of, and not only just a hybrid of short tracks and intermediates, but like built in the days where like every racetrack that was built, in the 60s, 50s, 70s and stuff wanted to be unique in some form or fashion. And so even though this track is under a mile, it has very high banking in both corners, almost like a Dover, in the shape of like a Kansas. And so I would lean a lot more into this race just from a fundamental perspective, being much more similar with those types of tracks, Charlotte, Dover, and the intermediate people that we've seen have speed at those tracks should carry over, which they were able to carry over in average speeds today, like the Ty Majeskis, the Jones, or like Thor Sport as a team, Tricon as a team, like the guys that we've seen up front uh, at intermediate tracks were the same guys who have carried speed so far in practice and stuff, and especially on the long run. Now, since this track was repaved recently, we don't have a huge fall off of tire wear. Um, so the drop off between 5, 10, 15 in the long runs aren't very much at all. And so what that tells me is that there's a real case to be made that there isn't going to be a lot of passing in this race,
Mhm.
or the uh, the amount of upside that people have to really go up through the field um, should probably be limited today, because I think it'll be very difficult to pass. Everybody's kind of starting at least where they should be. Obviously, with the starting grid, we have people like Daniel Hemrick, Tyler Ankrum, Stuart Friesen, Roger. Well, Stuart might be a bad example because the wall in practice is going to the rear. But we have like Corey Hyman 15th, Ankrum in 16th, Daniel Hemrick in 17th, and Finger in 19th. These guys should project to finish inside the top 9, but there's a real case that it takes them all race to go from that position, into 7th, 8th, and 9th and stuff. So far this year and even last year, when Corey Hyman started 15th, 18th, 20th, or whatever, he has been able to get up through the field pretty fast and end up taking the lead. I have him projected to lead the most amount of laps today, um, very close with Chandler Smith, who is starting up in the front of the field. But I don't think there's going to be much. Um, what's the word? I don't think there's going to be a lot of crashes. I don't think there's going to be a lot of guys in the back of the field being able to pass through. Like in terms of value, I think this limits a lot of the cheaper value options today, because like Jack Wood, Dawson, Timmy Hill in the mid 20s should finish, like 4 or 5 positions higher than where they're at now. Tony, Nathan Beard, Frankie Muniz, Spencer Boyd, they should finish like 2 or 3 positions ahead of where they're starting. And so people should probably finish close to where they start today, due to how I think this track is going to end up playing out, with the limited amount of fall off, the fact that they're probably going to be running, 1 to like 1.5 lanes. Back in the day, these drivers could go all around the track. I don't think that's going to happen today, just because tire wear isn't an issue. There's not a lot of fall off. It's a repave. Those are kind of my thoughts on how this track's going to play out.
Taking my metaphor a little one step further, back to my horse racing days. For those of you that have been following the NASCAR content, I always revert back to when I used to bet on harness racing all the time. And one of the things that was interesting about harness racing in the New York area was there were 2 completely separate tracks with different characteristics. There's the Meadowlands, which was a mile track, which for harness racing is very, very long. It's just one time around, which is, it doesn't happen too often. And then literally 20 miles away in New York, there was Yonkers Raceway, which was a half-mile track, and it was just a completely different dynamic. So I'm used to this whole idea. And whenever there would be a race at Yonkers, for example, the primary goal of everybody was handicapping was just who's getting the lead. Okay, so like who's getting the lead? If you get the lead, you're just have a big advantage. Okay, and if you don't get the lead, you better be like close because you're not coming from dead last at Yonkers. Like you can come from dead last in the Meadowlands, but you can't come from dead last at Yonkers. So when I always look at these kind of shorter tracks, maybe this isn't as short as some of this, but when I look at say Richmond, look at me flashing my knowledge of Richmond. Right? When I look at tracks that have a lot of laps and you get rewarded for leading a lot of laps, the first thing I look at is who's getting the lead, right? So you see you have Jake Garcia and Chandler Smith at 1-2, and this goes back to harness racing. If I had, if I was hoping to bet on someone from the rail, maybe he wasn't quite as good as the horse that was from the 2 or whatever it is. I'm like, all I got to do is get out there and put him in the freaking hole, okay? And then I'll take my chances, So I guess that's my first question is if we're going to lean towards, Dominators, guys near the front, can Jake Garcia just like put freaking Chandler Smith in the hole and lead enough laps right out of the gate to make him good enough?
I don't think Jake can do it.
Okay.
But the answer to your question, because I between like the top 5 guys, Chandler Smith is probably the favorite to lead laps.
Okay.
I don't think Jake can do it, but I think that keeps Ben Rhodes and Lane Riggs very much alive in this race.
Okay.
Because I think the run order at some point should be Chandler Smith, Ben Rhodes, Lane Riggs.
Okay.
And so if Chandler Smith not even like runs into issues or crashes, if he just has a bad corner, I think Ben Rhodes or Lane Riggs can very easily take the lead early in this race. Kind of piggybacking off of that, due to the fact that I don't think there's going to be a ton of passing stuff, I would be much more open to whether I get it in my stuff, whether I get it in the Sims, to take guys starting at a much higher starting position versus guys around them in salary. So like Andres Perez, like I think he's much more viable than probably first glances are giving him from a value perspective. Like he's 6,200, whereas like Dawson Sutton and Jack Wood are in the 20s. I think there's a real chance that like Andrew can maintain, his starting position and actually end up outscoring the other like 6K guys around him. I know you asked me about Jake Garcia, but I think
the reason why I mention it is again, we'll get to the Sims, we'll get into to all that kind of stuff, but I do like to kind of just bone up and just kind of like talk fundamentals the way I view them, just with you every once in a while. And again, to the same kind of analogy, I want to ask you about this is kind of a NASCAR question in general. When it came to get to harness racing, all horse racing, there were horses that were known as like speed horses, like horses that could always get the lead if they want, but sometimes weren't, whatever. Now, these are cars, these are machines, they're different. But is there like tendencies of drivers like that are better, like with the pole, for example, than others? Because I mean, one of the first things I kind of created when I was watching NASCAR is I created this delusion in my head that whenever Christian Eckes was near the front and could get the lead, he could lead for the whole race, right? And I don't know why I came up with it. Maybe I saw it one time, and then I just kind of created that as a narrative. Are there drivers, for example, that when they get like the pole or something, that they're better at holding the lead than other drivers, or that's just BS? It's just it matters what car you have.
I mean, I think there is for sure. The reason I answer that way is because since I look at recent form of how people run, and you look at where people usually rank at the end of a race in terms of what speed they had, that's usually very correlated to what position they were running. So, like if you were the fastest car, you were most likely the fastest person, at the end of the race or whatever. Typically in situations to where, like answering your question, if certain people are able to be better, is it because they qualified up there? Is it because they are expected to have the fastest car, or they have shown that previously? Is it because the team is faster? Like the answer to your question is yes, but I don't know if it's directly because driver A just has a skill level of starting in the front row better than driver B.
Okay.
So like typically we see that happen. A driver maintain, first place or whatever when they're with a fast team, when they've showed speed either at that track type, in practice and stuff. So the short answer is yes, but I think it's much more variables out there than just they're good at starting first or
Okay.
second.
So let's look at some of these guys now, and then we'll actually run some sims and run some models and stuff like that. But at the projections I put up, the two guys that are just at least showing up as the highest owned are Corey Heim, who you mentioned, and Brandon Jones. I have Corey Heim at 60% projected ownership, and I have Brandon Jones projected at 45. And Brandon Jones, to that point, is starting 29th.
Mhm.
And let's just start with those two guys. And we talked about you being able to identify good chalk versus bad chalk. I imagine that a lot of lineups are going to have both these guys in it. Which of these guys do you think is more fishy or more dangerous, or you know what, they should just both be jammed and we'll figure out how to get different elsewhere?
And so this is a race where I think both of these individuals are good plays
Okay.
based on the cars that they're in, based on especially like specifically, let's talk about Jones. So this race I've been talking about, I think it's gonna be difficult to pass. Everything I've stated here, Jones is not in that camp because he's surrounded by people who are much slower than he is. He just had a bad qualifying lap. He should very easily be able to pass at least like 9 cars in front of him within the first 10 laps, and then he can follow, you know, Eckes, Ankrum, Hemrick, all those guys that are expected to finish in the top 10. He should also follow that group and finish in that range. And so I think Jones is good chalk. Corey Heim has been the fastest car at similar track types and short tracks. Like he's just been the fastest car in the series. That's why he's carrying that ownership. To answer your question, from a build perspective, I think they're both good plays. I will obviously be using both of them. But if I had to get different with one of them, it would actually probably be Corey Heim, due to the fact that Chandler Smith is starting up front. Um, he could very easily lead and outscore and push out Corey
Right.
based on a salary perspective. And then also, Tyler Ankrum, Daniel Hemrick, and Enfinger are expected to have very similar speed to Corey Heim. So if you don't use Corey Heim, I don't feel like you're giving up a ton of like ceiling upside because Ankrum, Hemrick, and Enfinger can very much have a very similar race to what Corey can have. Um, so those are my thoughts.
I want to ask you about two other kind of value-ish type plays. One you kind of already mentioned, and then I'll just kind of throw another one in there, just from my scouring the industry and my looking at my numbers. Do you have any? And then we'll build a little bit. What do you think of Honeycutt, Caden Honeycutt, and or Dawson Sutton?
Let's start with Dawson Sutton first. So if we're looking at a value range in this race, yes, there's a lot of guys in the 8 and 9K range that you need, but from everything I've looked at so far, I've ran my stuff. I don't see myself. Maybe it's from just a raw projection standpoint, but I really don't see myself using any of the 5K drivers in this race. Um, I don't think we really need the salary. I just don't have builds that end up going that way due to Sims or raw projections. And so, due to that, Dawson Sutton seems to be like the cheapest guy that I'm actually using in my lineups. Because I think that $6,100 is kind of irrelevant when the 5K range is scoring like 17, 15 points. Whereas if like Dawson can, very easily score anywhere from like 25 to 30, like I will take the raw points from him at a lower value than the people around him in salary. In regards to Caden Honeycutt, um, I don't really have a view
Okay.
on him, good or bad. He's one of those individual drivers that he's starting seventh. I would have him project like finish seventh or sixth. He would need to get the lead on pit lane or do something out of the norm to, you know, win or run away with this race to really be in play for DFS today. But, or on a slate, but yet again, if this is a race to where things are going to be much tighter in terms of passing, he's already starting in the seventh position. Um, I'm personally not going to play him, but if we were going to play Caden Honeycutt, this is probably a track and race that would benefit him starting 7th versus deep in the field.
Okay. Before I run these, I just wanted to ask you about 2 particular guys because, again, I'm putting my projections up and right alongside of the SaberSim projection. I know a lot of people use the SaberSim projections, so I like to know where I'm going to be that much different because, that in a way that's good if you're different than projection system that a lot of people are using, right? So, but if I'm way off, I just want to just kind of just get you to authorize it in a way. So the few guys that I'm way different on. Number one, I'm much lower on Corey Haim than SaberSim at least. Okay, so I have him at 58 as opposed to Corey Haim at SaberSim has him at 65. And then there's another one that I have significantly different. I have, where was this? It's good. If it's, I think I had a much higher. I have Honeycutt a little bit higher, but there was somebody I thought I had like 10 points higher, and now I can't find him. I have Chandler Smith a little bit higher, I guess. I guess that was pretty much it. No, I have this other cheapo. No, not really. So yeah, I guess that was pretty much it. I just want to just double check that I had nothing completely off the board. So is it okay if I'm like that much lower than Saber? I mean, what's your projection on Corey Haim, if you don't mind?
So I got Corey at 66.45. I have
You got
Chandler
him up
Smith
there
at
too, right? Yeah.
I have him at a 56.25. But with that said, that's Corey. I gave Corey like a 4th place finish with 38 laps led and 11 fast laps. In a 200 lap race, that's actually a really, really low projection from what I normally have him at a race with this amount of laps led. So when I look at my stuff, I mean, I do my stuff differently to nearly anybody else. But when, like, this is a situation where his projection should be higher if he's expected to win this race on my own stuff. Since I have him lower, obviously he's the favorite to win projection wise. I think he's the highest on SaberSim too, but I just can't give him a higher number than that. And so what that indicates to me is that I don't think Corey is a lock like he has been in these past races. There's a real chance that yet again it's difficult to pass here. And normally when Corey, qualifies in the teens, he's drastically faster than the field at practice. That was not the case. Now he was 3rd fastest in overall times, but when I start looking through, his 5-lap runs, his 10-lap runs, he's like 5th in the 5, 10 in the, or 3rd in the 10. What really concerns me is his 15 and 20-lap runs. He's much slower than his counterparts of people like Ty Majeski, who's expected to be fast, Chandler Smith, his teammates and stuff. And so I actually do have one lineup already made on DraftKings, and it doesn't have Corey Haim today. So I'm perfectly okay with the fact that your stuff is coming back with being lower on Corey Haim than probably what SaberSim is doing, because I think I'm probably going to be on a similar path. Even though I have him as my highest projected driver.
Yep.
Because if I had him,
okay.
go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say, that typically at tracks like this, I would have Corey Haim projected for like maybe like 78, 80 points. The fact that I have him for 66 today just is something that I would look at on my personal stuff and be like, there's probably more question marks than normal on him.
Do you now to answer your question, Dakota? Now I'm questioning why Sheets is here. I'm questioning it too, but the reason I'll tell you the reason why Sheets is here, as I do that horrible thing of speaking about myself in the 3rd person. The reason why I'm here, number one, is because I can be, because I finally have a little bit of time. The market was closed today, so I'm a little less busy. And Mrs. Sheets is actually in Austin for the weekend on a girls' trip actually. So I have some time to do this, and I wanted to catch up with learning myself about how to deal with these with NASCAR in general. And also I wanted to show people again, like how I use SaberSim and how I use my lineup build expertise, I guess, to hopefully make up for the lack of fundamental knowledge I have some time. And if we could put both these things together, maybe, just maybe that we're onto something. Andrew saying Honeycutt is a Blake. Oh, you know what? That was the other one. That's so funny that you mentioned it. This was the other guy. That's so funny, Andrew. I knew it was somebody. Bailey Kerr is the other one that I'm way higher than SaberSim on. So I'm way under on what's his name on Heim, and I'm 7 points higher on Bailey Curry. So that makes me happy. And Garcia, yeah. So right now, again, and we'll talk about different ways to look at it. What I did was I just ran my lineups just as is, and they're rated by what they're called Saber Score. And for those of you that have never really gotten into the weeds with this, when it rates it by Saber Score, it's not just the highest projected lineup. There is actually a formula that I don't want to get too into the weeds with, but 100 times the sim optimal, and then they factor in the projection, and then what they do is they subtract 0.2 times the average adjusted ownership. Now again, what's going to affect that is the ownership that you put in, and I have started putting in my own ownerships to replace SaberSims. I just find that they're a little less of a random number generator than SaberSim is. Okay, so when I rate these by Saber Score, this is what I get, and you could argue that this is really just good enough, to put to rank the lineups. So if I did that, just so you guys know, I'd be getting 80. You can see what I have: 88% Corey Heim, 68% Brandon Jones. This is the first time I've run this, and essentially all these guys that I mentioned. The one kind of cool guy that I'm way over on is this Stuart Friesen play for some reason. And again, I can't quite identify why, but sometimes almost like MMA, just the pricing of some fighters or some players or some whatever is just a price that allows you to do certain other things that even if somebody at that price doesn't look all that great, like in the NBA, I can't tell you how many times this season I was getting to so much of these like awful looking $5,400 players that. And I'm like, why is that? Well, you want to know why? Because that allows you to do this other stuff, so that could be the reason why I'm getting the freeze, and it's just a lineup construction thing.
So normally I don't tell you to override anything. And normally I agree with everything you said, which actually is not even agreeing, but that is the way you should go about it.
But what do we got?
I would manually override that because Friesen hit the wall in qualifying.
Ooh.
And he's getting repairs and he'll be starting from the rear.
Okay.
And I firmly believe that hurt his vehicle.
Okay, so he's going to be starting in like last or something?
Yes, and I think he has pretty significant damage to the car that limits him in terms of what he can do in this race.
Okay, so I was going to ask you a question, and then when you answer it, I'm going to tell you a story from the stock market days. So what do you think? I should just X him out?
What do you have him right now in your
41%?
I'd have like 10 to 15.
It's really okay. So that you answered the question. So here's a great story. So there was a guy, one of my favorite analysts, whatever, that I would listen to in my when I would be getting hedge fund ideas. He would call me all the time, and he would say, "This is a great opportunity. This stock is." Let's say he wanted to buy it. He's like, it's got great fundamentals. It's got this. It's got good momentum. This. I think it's a great stock. And I'm like, would you buy? And I said, would you buy it now? He's like, don't ask me. You're the trader. You know what I mean? Like, but I'm like, oh, really? Should I exit out? No, I don't want. I'm not saying that. I'm telling you, you hit the wall. I'm telling you, he's not so good. What you do with that information, that's on you, buddy. Right? That's basically the story. And I might actually do something about that. But what I like to do is I like to run the sims for a lot of reasons, but one of them is to see the delta between what I'd be getting without running the sims and just running, rating by Saber Score. And after I did run the sims, now I will tell you that, again, I'm getting a little greedy here. What I'm doing is using my ownership to predict what the field is going to do. And I just started doing it, this year. And it's so far I've honestly gotten much closer than Saber Sims fields have right now, just for the lottery. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use my ownership to predict what the field's going to do, And then we will run the sims with those contest fields. And let's see what kind of difference we get here. Now we're going to have to remember.
While that runs, I do want to kind of go back to Caden and Bailey Curry really fast and stuff. So yet again, this is not because these things are being brought up and I'm coming up with this answer. I forgot what the term of that is called, but in situations to where, you know, I've stated I have question marks on what Corey Heim can do. I think people are more likely to hold on to their positions and stuff. When we look at the range of outcomes in situations like that, the Bailey Curry, Caden Honeycutt, Tanner Gray, these people are or these individuals are drivers who are the benefactors of races and situations like that. So the fact that you're lower on Corey Heim and your stuff, and we can see what the Sims say here, but the fact that you're lower on Corey Heim, that makes much more sense of why your stuff is pushing those drivers, because those are the people who are directly benefiting or the beneficiaries of situations where not even situations, just outcomes where Corey Heim isn't as fast as the field thinks he is.
Yeah. So if I ran the sims, this is what it would look like. And I see the main difference is I'm getting a lot of time at jet ski in this variation, like 73%. Now, again, that doesn't mean I have to play 73%, but I like to see what the impact of the sims kind of does here. Now, the one thing, again, that you might want to do in a very high variance sport is diversify somewhat, and that is to go more min uniques than just min uniques one. So one technique to do that, for those who haven't watched some of my other sports videos, is you could just continue to go min uniques 1, 2, 3, 4, but you want to make sure that's not completely devastating your whole portfolio. So what you want to look at are these metrics that are kind of listed here. Either this, see what this is, the average projection of your, say, 60 lineups, if you're playing 60. This is the median destination ROI, and this is the min destination ROI. So what you want to do is you're going to go as many min uniques as you can without it devastating these numbers by too much. And like anything else, it's more of an art than a science. But when I go from 2 to 3, I did see the ROI drop pretty hard down to 57 from 80, whatever. Now, again, so that's what maybe I'll go min uniques 2. Let's just see what happens if I go from min uniques 3 to min uniques 4. Let's see how badly that. See, that goes all the way to minus 93% or something like that. So obviously we're not going to do that. But maybe min uniques 3 we could do. And here's one thing that you have to also get used to. If you go to more min uniques, it's not doing what you think it would do. Like, you would think that if you go more min uniques, it'll give you less of your top owned guys. It's not always the case. What it usually will do, well, in other sports, is it'll just diversify the rest of the lineups underneath it. You know, it'll still give you the core that you wanted, whatever. So maybe I will go min uniques 3, and then I'm still left with this decision on what to do about the Stewart Friesen. If you're starting in the back and there's car issues, yeah, I bet. Now here's the $64,000 question. Like, how is that impacting his ownership? Like, is he going to be like 4%? Like, if he's like 4%, I might have to take a shot. But if he's still going to be like 15, I mean, like, I have to probably X him out, I think.
If he's near what you have him for 18. If he's anywhere near that, it's because people aren't paying attention to what's going on. His ownership should be at like 4 to 5. That's why I said 10 to 15 earlier.
All right, so you know what? If you think his ownership should be like 4 to 5, you know what we're going to do? What we're going to do is we will just. Well, I don't want to X him out, but what we could do, we could change his projection. That would do the trick. But you know what? Let's just manually move him to 6. You think he should be 4 or 5? We'll make it 6. And we'll hit apply. And then say goodbye to Stewart Friesen. Thank you very much. And we'll still keep min uniques 3. And we're going to do direct fill. So we're just going to basically just take these lineups and throw them in the piston like this. And then we'll go and throw the one lineup into the spotter like this. And now I'll show you another thing you could do if you were lazy. I want to show you not if you were lazy. I want to show you an MMA trick that may or may not work for NASCAR. But let's just see. Hold on. All right, we're gonna talk about it for a second. Hold on, let's put these lineups in. And I'm curious to get Andrew's take on this because he's fiddled around with MMA a little bit. So let's say that you have a. It's probably not going to work, but let's pull the projections up here for a second. Let's say you have a chalky, like cheapo, which would be who? I guess Brandon Jones would be the example, right? See, it's not going to work because his projection is really high too.
Mm-hmm.
See, sometimes what you can get away with, let me just see this. He's actually projected higher than, say, Chandler Smith, for example. All right, so that's not going to work. Because sometimes what you can do, and this is like an MMA trick, is that let's say you have an $8,200 fighter fighting an 8K fighter, and you like both of them. The 8K guy is kind of chalky, but you still want to play him. What you do, as long as the 8,200 guy projects higher, that what you do is you play the 8K guy and then intentionally leave 200 on the table. Mm-hmm. So what you're doing is tricking everybody. Like you're daring everybody else to use that 200 on the higher projected player, mm-hmm. and your play is just fine, but but nobody's really going to play with that particular salary left because the optimizers will put the more expensive guy in, and you'll mm-hmm. get this all the time. Like last week, you had a Volkanovski against Diego Lopes, and one was 8,200, one was 8K or whatever it was, and it didn't work out this way. But the Lopes lineups that were identical to the Volkanovski lineups going into the last fight, let's say everything else was the same. The mm-hmm. Lopes lineups were like 8-1, like unique against mm-hmm. Volkanovski. So that's a neat trick you could look for in NASCAR if you have like kind of a chalky cheapo. But the problem is that some of these cheapos just project so strongly that it's just so hard to do, Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking of doing. Is I wanted to see if I could just trade off. What's Friesen projecting for example?
See, and I don't feel like it's the cheapo in this situation. I think
what I was going to do. What I was going to do is if Friesen is 8K, and we don't think he's going to do much. Like let's say you played like Jake Garcia. No one would have played Friesen anyway. Okay, that's what I was going to say. Mm-hmm. All right, never mind.
Well, I was going to say the place where that example would probably be most useful today would be at Corey Haim at 11,000, and pivoting down to Chandler Smith.
That's true. No, absolutely. I mean, but you're giving up. Yeah, I mean, if you played Chandler Smith and left 300 on the table, like you've turned a Chandler Smith 20% owned play into like a 8% owned play. Mm-hmm. No one's playing Chandler Smith, leaving 300 on the table, and not playing Corey. You know what I mean? That's actually a perfect example. Mm-hmm. So again, I've never run it, so I've never really tried it, but it's certainly something in the big lottos that you might want to screw around with.
So as I said, I have a lineup in already. That's actually exactly what I did. Actually, I took
awesome. Let's go.
Lineups that projected very well with Corey Haim and just put Chandler Smith in there.
Love it. I think it's great. So this is my big buy-in, and it looks obviously like really chalky, but that's fine. I mean, this will be okay. And I am putting a lot of faith in my Yonkers theory, though. I'm really putting a lot of faith in Jake Garcia maintaining this position for a while, and he's not going to be low owned either. I don't think. People love the poll, so we'll just see how that works out, I guess.
Yeah, I want to add that if we look at the bottom of the starting grid today, so Cody blew a motor in practice. I don't believe that they're going to get that car raceable. Norm Benning is probably not going to finish the race. Steven has start and parked every race he's done this year. So there's a real chance that your bottom three starters don't even see like lap 30. And so we're really running with 32 like running cars at this. And so we lose the bottom of the finishing order. So that potentially limits the danger that people in the back half of the field have of finishing dead last if the final 3 finishing positions are already taken up by people not running in the race.
Well,
Um,
wait. This is good information here. So who do we think is not finishing?
Cody Dennison.
Okay, there's one. I see. I had 4 lineups with him. Who needs it? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Who else?
Steven at
Who,
52, starting 33rd.
Malozzi
Yeah,
and Norm Benning. You think?
and Norm Betting. Like I would specifically not play those 3
Oh, those
drivers.
are see. That's great. I mean, because you never know. Like those 5 lineups can now become like something else.
Mhm.
Excellent. Very good.
The reason and yet again, this is more so why I have so much interest in playing the 6K range drivers of Bailey Curry, Sutton Wood, Matt Mills and stuff, is just because like that's already 3 guys out of the 5K range that like we're just not playing. Um, and the remaining drivers left in the 5K range, Boyd, Frankie, Nathan, like they're really not expected to really finish higher than where they started. And so, not just you, I would advise most people to really not dip in the 5K range today. I just don't think you need it. I'd rather take the risk of having somebody like Bailey Curry start up front and lose a couple positions and then still outscore everybody who starts at the back of the field.
Yeah, I do have a couple, but nothing. Yeah, so I do have a couple of these guys. Like I have the Bredlinger, whoever that is, and then I do have some of these guys. Ooh, let me get that. I can't. I don't do that. Yeah, this is actually pretty sad. I mean, we'll talk about some of them. My brother, who is 3 years younger than me, I feel really bad. He was much closer to my mom than I was. I mean, he spoke to her literally every day for 10 years, and it's a real hole left in him.
Mm-hmm.
So now he literally he calls me every day, just to talk about nothing. The same nothing that he would talk about my mom all the time. So it's very tough on him. So
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yep. Yeah. So I guess that's all I have. I guess should I get greedy? Should I? I wonder if I should do this. Should I take out the Justin Carrolls and the Nathan Birds and the Spencer Boyds and stuff? I'll just keep them in here just for funsies. You never know. Not
so I guess on the last part of that, because I did get some questions on Discord and stuff related to like the value range of like questions about like Timmy Hill and stuff. Yet again, first and foremost, I like the 6K range more. If I'm actually going in the 5K range, the person that I would imagine has the better DraftKings day would probably lean Spencer Boyd, because if you're looking at Timmy Hill versus Spencer Boyd, I think their projections are very similar. I'd just rather take the 31st place starting position for Boyd. But one thing that's really interesting is that Justin Carroll ran. Let me get this. He ran 36 laps in practice. Now, yet again, this is an hour practice or 50-minute practice, but he nearly never runs practice laps at all in these races, and he's finished like last in a lot of these races recently. But that's just interesting. And he's actually, his last couple finishes now, these have been at like plate races and stuff, but any race that he started this year, he's finished inside the top 28. So if I'm manually building or doing stuff, the fact that Justin Carroll is $5,100, starting 32nd, projected to finish the race, I think that's pretty significant in the 5K range, because I don't think people are going to play him. If you have a really chalky lineup that is using Spencer Boyd or potentially Timmy Hill, I would be encouraged to pay nearly the min salary at Carroll if you're building a lineup that has like Majeski, or not even Majeski, just a lot of expensive drivers in this. I think Justin Carroll makes a lot of sense in those lineups. Other than that, I don't really have anything
all right
else to say.
So that's great. So I'm gonna get out of here then, and we'll
Yeah.
I'll be back at like 5:30 to do baseball, and basketball, and we'll already maybe be talking about how we're mad at
It's the big wreck,
somebody.
and I will.
Ty Majeski or somebody. I don't know what we'll be mad at, but
and not just for you, but for everybody. I will. I'll go ahead and record the tools
Okay.
video.
Great.
Best of luck, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. See you guys.